Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The FBI arrests 4 suspects behind an alleged New Year's Eve bomb plot. Attorney General Pam Bondi said a group called the Turtle Island Liberation Front was planning the attack. Police are investigating the deaths of director Rob Reiner and his wife at their LA home. Their son is now under custody. What we know so far about the incident. An update on the tragic Brown University shooting. Police have released a man previously held as a person of interest. China's economic slowdown deepens. New official data shows its retail sales growth falling to its lowest point since 2022. Another surge of bitter Arctic air is sweeping across the country, bringing dangerous cold to more than 200 million Americans.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. The FBI says it has thwarted a bomb plot against multiple targets in Los Angeles and Orange County. The U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California said the suspects are members of the Turtle Island Liberation Front. According to its own social media, the Turtle Island Liberation Front describes itself as an anti-capitalist, anti-government movement. The U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California said one of the defendants helped organize a more radical part of the organization called the Order of the Black Lotus. He said all of the defendants are members. FBI Director Kash Patel said the suspects were planning coordinated IED bombing attacks on New Year's Eve. Patel said they have been targeting 5 separate locations across Southern California. Bondi said targets included immigration enforcement agents and vehicles. 4 suspects were arrested Friday when they attempted to build and detonate explosive devices in the desert. The U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California said all 4 defendants are from the Los Angeles area. Patel said a 5th suspect linked to the group was arrested in New Orleans. He said that individual had been planning a separate attack. An update on the tragic shooting at Brown University. Police have released a man held as a person of interest in the incident that left 2 students dead and 9 injured. The mayor of Providence said this morning a video that's been released to the public is the clearest picture of the person believed to be responsible, but the investigation is ongoing.
We have been continuing this investigation since the very beginning now, not even 48 hours. And so we're running down tips that have come in, leads that have been developed, recanvassing the immediate area for additional video evidence. But the investigation is fully underway with a lot of resources that have been offered and that we're taking advantage of from our partners both locally and federally.
Police in Providence said yesterday that a man in his 20s was taken into custody in connection with Saturday's shooting. At a late-night news conference hours later, Providence Mayor Brett Smiley said the man would be released.
We know that this is likely to cause fresh anxiety for our community.
Smiley says the investigation was going in a different direction and that he doesn't believe the community is at risk.
And so the status of safety in our community remains unchanged. And we believe that you remain safe in our community.
Certainly there was some degree of evidence that pointed to this individual, but that evidence needed to be corroborated and confirmed.
Police say they got a tip and the FBI followed through with it, and they ended up locating the individual of interest who was eventually released. FBI Director Kash Patel yesterday said the agency activated the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team to provide critical geolocation capabilities. Authorities say 7 of the injured are in stable condition, 1 is recovering but still in critical condition, and 1 has been discharged from the hospital. First fatality in the shooting has been named as Ella Cook, a sophomore who served as vice president of the campus college Republicans. Her identity was confirmed by her parish in Alabama and by a former classmate. Crowds gathered at a Providence park yesterday evening to honor the victims.
I always felt that Brown is such a safe place, and Providence as well, and so it really kind of hits home. we're all very sad and coming out of a period of being very scared.
President Trump paid his respects to the victims.
Unfortunately, 2 are no longer with us. Brown University, 9 injured, and 2 are looking down on us right now from heaven.
Trump called Brown one of the greatest schools anywhere in the world.
Things can happen. So to the 9 injured, get well fast, and to the families of those 2 that are no longer with us, I pay my deepest regards and respects from the United States of America.
The attack set off hours of chaos across the Ivy League campus and surrounding Providence neighborhoods as hundreds of officers searched for the shooter and urged students and staff to shelter in place. Brown University has canceled exams and classes for the rest of the year. Daniel Monahan, Entd News.
The Providence City Council is directing people with any information related to Saturday's shooting at Brown University to share it with the FBI. That includes any tips, videos, or photos as authorities continue their investigation, and tips can be sent to fbi.gov/Brown University shooting. Meanwhile, 4 people accused of plotting New Year's Eve bombings have been arrested, and President Trump condemns the shootings at Brown University and in Sydney, Australia as well, and an ISIS attack in Syria. To give us analysis from a law enforcement perspective is Greg Schaefer, retired FBI special agent, elite hostage rescue team. He's the principal and COO of the Active Shooter Prevention Project. Greg, good afternoon to you. You know, we always talk about how to stop tragedies from happening in the first place. Do you think the 4 that were arrested, do you think this is an example of law enforcement, just doing their job and preventing an attack before it even takes place?
No, absolutely, Don. This is, this is what you want from the FBI is, getting, ahead of the bang, getting left of bang and preventing these kind of acts from happening. Although the organization doesn't seem to be very sophisticated, the fact that they use social media to communicate with one another dictates that. The fact that they were using pipe bombs, although very deadly, pipe bombs again are not the most sophisticated IED that can, that's out there today. So, I'm sure the FBI saw some of these social media posts. This organization got on the radar of the FBI. The FBI then conducted their investigation. They maybe even inserted some confidential informants, or undercover agents to help move the case forward. Again, that remains to be seen. But this is the exact way you want the FBI to conduct investigations: is get in front of it and prevent these things from happening before injuries occur.
Talking about this extremist group's social media, its account, posted things like freeing the world from American imperialism is the only way to a safe and peaceful future. So I'm just wondering, how effective are the tools right now for law enforcement that they have at their disposal to identify radicalized individuals that are planning attacks?
Well, we always, the FBI always tries to stay ahead of the power curve when it comes to technology. A lot of times the law enforcement is chasing, the tails of the offenders. They come up with innovative ways to conduct their crimes and plan their, their criminal activity. So the FBI sometimes falls behind that technology curve. But I think in this instance, the FBI did a great job, again, in looking at the social media postings and following up with that, through the advances of technology that just come into play with the FBI literally in the last decade. This is all new technology, the tracking of, of cell phones to this extent, the way they were able to identify the location of the individuals releasing the Brown shooting, for example, and just getting into the social media platforms and working alongside those technology firms and helping them assist the FBI in identifying who's out there putting these threats out over the internet.
And I did want to get your comments on the Brown University shooting as well. President Trump, First Lady, expressed sympathies to the victims and families of the attack in the university, and as well in Bondi Beach in Australia and the ISIS attack in Syria as well. But let me focus just a little bit on the Brown University attack right now. The suspect, still remains at large. I'm just wondering, is there anything to be said, or is there anything that stands out to you about this attack? The alleged shooter being able to enter a classroom, right, fire more than 40 rounds, and then escaping all before the police even arrived.
Well, it does reiterate the fact that these active shooter events can happen anytime and anywhere on a small campus like Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. So, that's one thing that sticks out, is that, again, it can happen anywhere. 40 rounds is a lot of rounds. That's a lot of empty shell casings lying on the floor. I'm sure the FBI has collected all those, and shell casings in and of themselves can provide a lot of intelligence and information and evidence to lead us to maybe who was responsible for this. Again, arresting somebody who was a person of interest and releasing them, again, reiterates the fact that, these scenes are very chaotic, and a lot of things are happening all at one time. So for the police to go to a hotel 20 some odd miles away based on the information they had at the time, and then detain somebody and then question him, then release them, it's not unheard of. You look back to the 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombing, and the same thing happened there with an individual who was detained by police for a while. So again, these crime scenes are very chaotic, especially in the first hours. What is discouraging is the fact that there's so few cameras on that college campus that were able to capture, photos or videos of this individual. The one video that has been released has a grainy, person walking down the sidewalk, dressed in black. Personally, he could be fleeing the scene because he heard the gunfire. Who knows? But that video does not give a lot of confidence to me that might be the person they're looking for. It's too innocuous at this time.
So in addition to that video, what do you think investigators are likely doing right now to narrow down the shooter's identity, given that the initial person of interest was released?
Yeah, they're collecting cell phones from anybody in the area, looking to see if anybody has videos that may have captured something. They're collecting, of course, traffic cameras and any cameras on the front doorstep of a Ring camera of a residence nearby, or a business that might have some surveillance cameras by their front door. So they're collecting a lot of data, a lot of videos. They're looking at who was in the area based on cell phone pings, and see if they can get a name, identify what somebody may have, said something in the past about creating some kind of violent act at Brown University. So, they're talking to everybody. They're collecting as many cell phones and videos as they can, and to come up with, something to move forward on. So right now, they have very little to go on other than that one grainy video you're showing right now of an individual walking away in black attire.
And Greg, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let me just get a couple more comments from you on the Syria attack, and then we'll end with the Australia attack. So U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter were killed by an apparent ISIS gunman. Can you speak to how active ISIS is in Syria right now?
Well, full transparency, I don't do a lot of international terrorism work anymore. I do know that the incident in Syria was the first fatality of U.S. forces since the Assad regime was overthrown, 9 or 10 months ago. ISIS is in play in Syria. I'm really hesitant to comment too much on how active they are, because I've been focusing more on the domestic side of the house when it comes to violence and domestic threats.
Fair enough. We'll just end with this. For the shooting in Australia, as you're well aware, a bystander tackled and disarmed one of the gunmen, right? He's being praised as a hero and credited for saving lives. Talk to us about the importance of acknowledging acts of heroism from people like this, like Ahmed Al-Ahmed, who was also shot, by the way.
No, I mean, you got to respect an individual that put his life at risk for those that he doesn't even know. I mean, tip my hat to him. We should definitely, recognize this individual as a hero. Undoubtedly, he did save lives. He disarmed the shooter from a shotgun, which is just, a very, very nice weapon to use if you want to create a lot of, critical incidents and a lot of bloodshed. So that individual should definitely be hailed as a hero. Something like the individual in our subway who choked out the individual, ultimately died in trying to save the people on our subway in New York. He was not hailed a hero. Instead, he was indicted and had to stand trial. But I think in instances like this, we should all stand up and applaud the individual who has the courage to do that. He didn't know the people who were being shot. He just knew that violence was occurring, and he felt obligated, as he said in his own words, to act like any human being should act.
And what makes me respect him even more, this Australian bystander, is that he was in a hospital, he was shot, and he said to the media that he would do it all over again. Very inspiring. So, Greg, that's all for today. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
China's economic slowdown deepens. New official data shows its retail sales growth falling to its lowest point since 2022. More news after this break.
That truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shenyun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
I've stayed hidden for decades, but I had to come back because they started selling Folicious at Walmart.
This isn't your average soup. It's made with real beef tallow and fresh spices. They think I survive on berries and bark, but this is real pho with real broth. And I'm never going back. They followed the smell of the pho. I gotta move. If they find this stash, it's over. Folicious. Restaurant quality, anywhere.
New data released today shows China's retail sales growth falling to its lowest point since 2022, indicating that the country's economic slowdown further deepened. Joining us to discuss is Daniel Lacalle, chief economist at Tresses Hedge Fund, international financial analyst, and the author of the book Freedom or Equality. Daniel, very good to see you. Good afternoon. Can you just start off to talk to us about how significant is this sharp slowdown in retail sales? last month. Is it an indicator of weakening consumer confidence?
Thank you very much, Don. It absolutely is. And it's very, very important because you may remember that the Chinese government centered all its economic growth plan and its strategy to improve its position relative to the export market on strengthening the consumer segment. A lot of the messages coming from the administration, from the government in China, were highlighting that if the Chinese citizens started to consume as they expected, then they would not have to rely on exports as much, and that would certainly strengthen the industrial and productive sector and bring back also the real estate sector. So what I find very important is that the slowdown, which now is being sort of diminished or at least talked like not important by the Chinese government, is actually very relevant because it is highlighting that the precise policy of the Chinese government, which was to strengthen and increase domestic consumption, is not working at all. And it's logical because the slowdown in economic growth is leading also to a slowdown in salaries. The weakness in employment is showing that youth employment has risen way too fast. And all those elements are making it impossible for domestic consumption to rise as much as the government wanted in order to offset the weakness of exports to the United States.
So Daniel, what would you say is the original sin, if you will? What has started this this effect of weak consumer confidence? Because it doesn't just happen overnight.
Exactly. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of incorrect policies that have been added one on top of the other. Number one, creating an entire economic system based on very, very low wages and a system in which the economy and the social fabric of the economy depends on each individual. Therefore, low wages and a very small level of social protection fabric create an environment in which citizens simply cannot increase consumption. Furthermore, those that had been able to save in the past years saved mostly in debt or paper coming from the real estate and construction companies. And those have been falling like a domino, and you have seen all the bankruptcies that have been published in the last months. All these elements go and add together in an explosive combination. Low wages, very, very weak social protection fabric, and at the same time, the demolishing of savings of a lot of private citizens that virtually saw their entire life savings disappear with the bankruptcies of the commercial paper of real estate companies. All those things have been very, very negative for the Chinese consumer.
Okay, speaking of real estate, maybe you can give us your comments on the property sector, because if we're looking at the data here, China's property investment through November fell nearly 16%. So how are you feeling about the property sector right now?
Well, the problem of the property sector in China is that the government was too obsessed about the idea of controlling the bursting of the real estate bubble. The government doesn't deny that there was a real estate bubble and doesn't deny that there's an enormity of houses that are completely abandoned and the fact that there are ghost cities all over China. Nobody denies that. However, instead of making the system clean it up quickly, a lot of things were implemented that made it impossible to be at least eliminated rapidly. Number one is that the government did not even allow citizens to go out and sell their properties in order to control the slowdown in prices, which led to a persistent reduction in prices over and over for years. And all of that has created a problem because on the one hand, you have real estate companies that are not being able to repay their debt, and at the same time, you have a system in which some things simply don't add up. No? On the one hand, you have unaffordable housing in the cities where there is demand for property, and on the other hand, you have an absolute excess of capacity elsewhere. So in real estate, what we are seeing is that the implosion of the real estate bubble is taking way longer than it should have if they had implemented free market decisions like getting everything out in 1 year, like we saw, for example, in the United States or Spain or Sweden.
So as you mentioned earlier, authorities have tried stimulating the economy, the property sector, consumption, and you said it didn't work. Why hasn't that worked?
Because you cannot have a low wage, low productivity economy based on making a lot of things very, very quickly and exporting them in order to keep everybody employed, and at the same time get people to consume the way that US people or US citizens or European citizens do. You need high wages. You need social protection fabric. You need a financial system that has freedom of capital and that doesn't have capital controls. Therefore, Chinese citizens, on the one hand, cannot spend and try to save as much as they can. And on the other hand, when they are trying to spend the way that they want to, they have capital controls. The problem of the Chinese economy is that you cannot have bake the cake and eat it. You cannot, on the one hand, say that you are going to have a completely controlled economic system in which you are keeping very low wages and you are making the economy competitive by maintaining a low-cost economy, and at the same time thinking that those citizens are going to be able to consume the way that US citizens do. Those things don't go together. You need a big middle class. You need a big fabric of protection that allows citizens to have credit cards, that allows citizens to use their funds the way that they want to. With sometimes they can make a mistake, sometimes they don't. But you cannot impose capital controls and at the same time expect citizens to spend more. That is why when you travel around China, you see all these gigantic shopping malls that are completely empty. Is that citizens simply cannot go out and purchase. It's virtually impossible to get the credit card and the payment system that the West has if you don't have a rising wage and high productivity economy. The Chinese economy is a high productivity one in technology, but in most parts of the economy is a very, very low wage, low cost competitiveness type of economy.
Okay, Daniel, just one final question. Given what you said, and given that the Chinese economy, the status quo of it, maintains, right? Nothing changes. What do you say about the trajectory of where the world's second largest economy is headed?
Oh, the economy is going to publish 5% per annum GDP growth. Don't doubt it. It's very simple. It's very easy to put a 5% print on the GDP growth of China when the economy is so controlled from the government perspective in terms of aggregate figures. But we're going to continue to see a weakening of the consumer and a weakening of the industrial sector that is not technology driven. Because the Achilles heel of the Chinese economy is working capital and the requirement of exporting as much as they can, because they cannot even reduce their working capital requirements with domestic consumption. So it's very, very challenging, because I don't think that you're going to see high wage growth and big employment gains when you have such a high level of youth unemployment that the government itself recognizes. So you need to let Chinese citizens move to other nations freely. You need to make Chinese citizens have the full availability and freedom of capital that we have in the West. You need to open the economy, and it's impossible for the Chinese economy to strengthen the way that it's that it can, because it's such an incredible country that has all the potential, but it cannot grow the way that it can and should with the increasing level of government intervention. What made China grow when the economy was opening was precisely that, was allowing private markets, private property, ownership of capital, ownership of savings and payments. And unfortunately, in the past 10 years, the government has gradually been implementing more and more control measures. And all of those have eroded the consumption, saving, and investment fabric of the Chinese economy, unfortunately.
Well, Daniel, you made such a great point about how even if the consumer continues to weaken, the government can just, print a 5% GDP number on paper regardless. Well, it's been really good to speak with you this week. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Thank you very much,
well.
Don.
Now to the ISIS attack over the weekend in Syria. U.S. military officials have now identified both American service members killed in the ambush. They are Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Torvar, 25, and Sergeant Williams Nathaniel Howard, son of an Iowa police chief, 29. Both are with the Iowa Army National Guard. A civilian interpreter was also killed, and 3 other guardsmen were wounded. President Trump is warning of what he calls very serious retaliation. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the details.
A deadly ISIS ambush in Syria killed 2 troops from the Iowa National Guard. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds said she's spoken to the victims' families.
I ask that all Iowans stand united in supporting them and lifting them up in prayer during this incredibly difficult time.
During a Christmas reception on Sunday, President Trump mentioned the terrorist attack several times, paying respects to the families and vowing to have justice.
The families of those 2 that are no longer with us, I pay my deepest regards and respects from the United States of America. Thank you very much. It's a very important thing to say, and we mean it. I can tell you in Syria, there will be a lot of damage done to the people that did it. They got the individual person, but there'll be big damage done.
The retaliation is expected to be a broader target of ISIS. Partner forces killed the gunman, and 5 with suspected ties have since been arrested. Lawmakers are encouraging the continued cooperation to totally dismantle ISIS.
Trump rooted out and took out the ISIS caliphate in his first term without starting another forever war. He's going to do that again.
The ISIS is still the most capable and the most dangerous Islamic terrorist group who have already demonstrated that their intent is to strike even within the United States.
Congressman Mike Turner noted that around 2,000 American soldiers are still in the country. President Trump emphasizes that Syria's president was devastated by the news, and Syria will keep fighting alongside U.S. troops. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
A Wisconsin judge goes on trial today for allegedly helping an illegal immigrant avoid arrest in her courtroom. Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan faces federal charges. She's accused of concealing a person from arrest and obstructing federal proceedings. The judge has pleaded not guilty and has been suspended from her job while the trial unfolds. The case stems from an April incident in which ICE agents attempted to arrest illegal immigrant Eduardo Flores Ruiz after a domestic violence hearing. Prosecutors say Dugan diverted the agents and escorted Flores Ruiz and his attorney through a non-public exit. And through this, it delayed his arrest. Dugan's lawyers argue she followed courthouse policy and acted in good faith. Police are investigating the deaths of director Rob Reiner and his wife at their LA home. Their son is now under custody. What we know about the incident so far. More news after this break.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, and being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. And my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
The son of legendary Hollywood actor and director Rob Reiner has been arrested for murder. The LAPD confirms Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were found killed in their Los Angeles home yesterday. According to booking records from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Nick Reiner has been arrested on homicide charges. He is being held on a $4 million bail. The 32-year-old has been in and out of rehab facilities for years due to drug issues. In an interview in 2016 with People magazine, Nick Reiner openly discussed his struggle with drug addiction and his experiences living on the streets. Here's what we know.
Actor-director Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead in their Los Angeles home on Sunday in a case that police are investigating as an apparent homicide. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and California Governor Gavin Newsom have each released statements confirming the deaths of Reiner and his wife. In a post on social media, Bass wrote that Reiner's passing was a devastating loss for our city and our country. Police have yet to publicly identify the deceased, however. LAPD Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton says police officers searched the house.
Upon arrival, they determined that there were 2 deceased individuals inside of the residence. The Los Angeles Police Department is now conducting an investigation at this residence here on Chadbourne, and that investigation will continue over the coming days. In terms of someone that may have information regarding what happened inside the residence, we're not going to release that information. That'll be part of the investigation.
He added that the cause of death will be made public by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office.
You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
As an actor, Rob Reiner was best remembered for his breakout role on the classic TV comedy All in the Family. He played Mike Meathead Stivic, the outspoken son-in-law and the liberal foil to Archie Bunker, portrayed by Carol O'Connor. Reiner was also known for his filmmaking, directing some of Hollywood's most beloved movies. That includes The Princess Bride, This Is Spinal Tap, and When Harry Met Sally. His wife, Michelle Singer, once worked as a photographer. and famously captured the image of Donald Trump featured on the cover of Trump, The Art of the Deal.
To discuss director Rob Reiner's passing, with us now is Christian Toto, award-winning film critic and host of the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Christian, good afternoon to you. So you've described Reiner's run in the 80s as Spielberg-level great. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I mean, the titles speak for themselves. These aren't just movies, these aren't just hits, but they become enmeshed in the culture. The Princess Bride, Misery, Stand By Me. This is Spinal Tap. A lesser-known film of his, which I thought was wonderful, was The Sure Thing. So many movies, so many indelible performances, and he was able to kind of bounce between genres. You had a mockumentary when they really weren't making that many mockumentaries. You had a rom-com. You've had thrillers. You've had dramatic performances. He did A Few Good Men. He could do it all. And, that power didn't last through the decades. In recent years, his films have been, the quality just hasn't been there. But boy, when he was on target, there was no one quite like him.
And you also say Reiner was a master at comedy, right? But his film Misery, maybe a perfect Stephen King adaptation. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think for many years, Hollywood struggled to get that Stephen King tone just right. We saw films that came close, some that were clunkers, but Misery just seemed note perfect. Of course, you had two great performances there, James Caan and Kathy Bates, but just really capturing what he brought to the written word and translating it almost seamlessly to the screen. A great story, a great movie, a two-hander, as they say, with not a lot of action in theory, but just complete tension. And also something that was oddly relatable. What if a superstar was trapped by his biggest fan and she wasn't quite all right? So just a memorable movie and just an example of how good he could be directing films. And of course, segueing from a sitcom actor into a popular director, another weird and not always successful transition, he made it look easy.
And why do you think that is? If you can just condense it into one thing, if possible, I mean, what made Reiner unique in cinema specifically?
I mean, I think he had great instincts. Obviously, growing up, his dad was Carl Reiner, one of the funniest people around. That certainly helped, fine-tune his sense of humor, working within the Hollywood realm on a sitcom that was beloved for so long. It's just talent, absolute talent. And, his movies, sometimes a director may make great movies and the public doesn't quite latch on to them. They're cerebral, they're esoteric, they're beautifully crafted. But I think his movies really checked all the boxes. The critics loved them, the people loved them. They became just symbolic of what the best of the best could be. I mean, when you think rom-coms, it's When Harry Met Sally. That is the prototype. When you think about Stephen King adaptations, Misery, I think, is the best. When you think about nostalgia movies, Stand By Me really captured what it meant to be a young person growing up confused, and the fact that it's not set in modern times didn't matter, because when you're young and you're a boy and you're just kind of growing up and learning what life is all about, all those different emotions are there and he captured them. And that's why it was so special. And again, that was another Stephen King adaptation, but just a very different kind of Stephen King story.
Do you think what you said just now, that will be what's going to be remembered of him, his legacy? If you could just elaborate on how people will remember his contributions.
Yeah, I mean, the films speak for themselves, his ability to tell different stories in different genres. In recent years, he just hasn't had that fastball. He hasn't really been able to kind of keep that streak alive. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes artists kind of lose their mojo. They can't really compete with themselves in the past. But I think when you think about Rob Reiner, that run in the 80s will just speak for itself. I struggle to think of another director who had that many hits, that scored with the public, that had movies that endure. There are many movies that you watch it now and you think, oh, that hasn't aged well, or I connected with it as a younger person, but it doesn't really speak to me now. But his films really just stand the test of time. I mean, the Tom Hanks, the Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan connection in When Harry Met Sally alone was just beautiful. And that film had those great New Year's Eve moments that we'll probably be watching again in a few weeks.
Okay, let me just ask you one more question. Out of all of his body of work, what is the best film to you, and tell us why?
This is Spinal Tap is so special. It's so funny. It's, it was a format that we weren't seeing a lot of at the time. It introduced these newer comic actors, Harry Shearer, Michael McKean. It really kind of captured rock in a way. It poked fun at it. It really spoke to where music was at that particular moment. My only sadness about that movie is I wanted to introduce it to my kids, but rock and pop and the whole music scene is very different today. I don't think they would get all the jokes per se. It's a movie that is beautiful and has aged well on the surface, but I don't think it connects with today's marketplace as much. But boy, you could go on and on quoting that movie, the great scenes, the jokes. It's just as good as it gets.
Yeah, he was a national treasure and he will be sorely missed. Well, Christian, thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
A potential terror attack in Germany averted. Authorities arrested 5 men over the weekend suspected of being radical Islamists planning an attack on Christmas market in Bavaria. The suspects include nationals from Morocco, Egypt, and Syria. Authorities say they were detained on Friday at the border crossing between Germany and Austria. Investigators believe the men intended to drive a vehicle into a crowded market area with the aim of killing or injuring as many people as possible. Pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai has been found guilty in a Hong Kong court. Rights groups say the case shows how the Chinese regime's national security law is being used to silence critics. Lai now faces a possible life sentence. Here are more details.
Hong Kong's High Court on Monday found pro-democracy activist and media boss Jimmy Lai guilty of working with foreign forces to harm national security. It also found the 78-year-old guilty of conspiracy to publish seditious material. These charges come from a tough national security law put in place by China and could leave him facing life in prison. The case has drawn international scrutiny of Hong Kong's judicial independence amid a years-long crackdown on rights and freedoms. Lai had pleaded not guilty to all charges. He started the now-closed Apple Daily newspaper and has been one of the strongest critics of China's Communist Party leadership. Lai has faced many legal cases, including those under the sweeping security law that China brought in after the pro-democracy protests in 2019. He has already spent 5 years in jail pending the outcome of his case and will be sentenced at a later date. Lai's lawyer, Stephen Kwan, said any decision on an appeal would come after the sentencing. A pre-sentencing hearing where Lai can plead for lenience is scheduled for early next year. The verdict caps a year that saw Hong Kong's pro-democracy camp virtually vanish. On Sunday, the city's last major opposition group, the Democratic Party, voted to disband under pressure from Beijing.
Meanwhile, reactions to the conviction of Jimmy Lai are pouring in. A former Apple Daily employee says he can't give up on Hong Kong, adding that people need to do the best things in the worst of times. Meanwhile, Lai's son, Sebastian Lai, says the UK is finally calling for his dad's release.
His citizenship is British, so there's an additional responsibility for the UK to stand behind him. Look, I think they are now in the right place. You would have seen the FCDO issued a strong statement today, but it's about putting action to words, because if you use the example of my father, for example, that's a man who did put action to words, right? Who for him, democracy, freedom, it weren't just ideals. They weren't just words in the wind. They were made real when he decided to sacrifice everything that he has to stand up for these ideals.
Our heart is heavy not because of the verdict today, but by getting the verdict now, it means we can expect sentencing soon. What me and some of my former colleagues of Apple Daily were expecting this outcome, but what we care the most is the sentence. Is it going to be 10, 15 years as predicted? Could he jail for life under the security law?
Lai's son, Sebastian, says the UK followed the US in calling for his father's release. Sebastian says the UK really should be leading the effort. He adds that the values his father stands for are international. Another surge of bitter Arctic air is sweeping across the country, bringing dangerous cold to more than 200 million Americans. More news after this break. And NTD goes back in time with vintage-era enthusiasts. The longtime tradition of NYC's holiday nostalgia subway train returns with music and dancing. More news when we come back.
Now's the the time to get your home ready for hosting with the holiday savings event at Mathis Home. They have over 100 dining sets in stock with the styles you like at incredible values. This set is a great deal. You get the contemporary trestle table and 4 comfy side chairs, all 5 pieces for just $6.99. And you don't have to wait. With fast and easy financing and free delivery, you can enjoy your new dining set tonight. Get the lowest prices of the year during the holiday savings event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
I've stayed hidden for decades, but I had to come back because they started selling Folicious at Walmart.
This isn't your average soup. It's made with real beef tallow and fresh spices. They think I survive on berries and bark, but this is real pho with real broth. And I'm never going back. They followed the smell of the pho. I gotta move. If they find this stash, it's over. Folicious. Restaurant quality, anywhere.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, 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 and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor. Give this holiday season and your first month's gift will be matched. Thank you.
Another surge of bitter Arctic air is sweeping across the country. It's bringing dangerous cold to more than 200 million Americans across dozens of states. Forecasters warn the Arctic blast will push into the northeast and southeast today, bringing life-threatening cold and the potential for frostbite and hypothermia. Temperatures across the northern tier plunged far below average over the weekend, with readings nearing -30 in parts of the upper Midwest. A major winter storm also disrupted travel across the northeast yesterday, causing widespread flight delays, cancellations, and power outages. Airports across the New York City region reported delays of several hours. The temperature in the Russian city of Yakutsk dropped to -49 degrees today, but some locals didn't appear to mind. Here's what some residents had to say about the bitter cold.
Погода отличная.
The weather is excellent. The winter has arrived. Proper cold.
Есть такое выражение.
As the saying goes, there is no bad weather, but only bad clothing. Dress up warm and everything is going to be fine.
Yakutsk has a population of 300,000 in Russia's eastern Siberia. It's widely considered to be the world's coldest major city. Local officials said that schools had to switch to online classes to help people cope with the frigid temperatures. Despite all that, public transport was operating normally and businesses and companies stuck to normal working hours. And three-time Super Bowl winning quarterback Patrick Mahomes has suffered a torn ACL in his left knee. The injury happened during the Kansas City Chiefs' loss to the Los Angeles Chargers yesterday. The injury occurred with just under 2 minutes remaining in the 16-13 defeat. The loss eliminated Kansas City from the playoffs for the first time in Mahomes' career. Mahomes was helped off the field by medical staff after being taken down from behind Chargers' Deshaun Hand. Backup quarterback Gardner Minshew took over but threw a late interception, sealing the Chargers' win. An MRI confirmed the seriousness of the injury. Mahomes said the Chiefs are exploring surgical options. Mahomes said the injury hurts but vowed to come back stronger. 'Tis the season at Hampton Court Palace in London. Once home to the King Henry VIII, Tudor culinary traditions are alive and well. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the festivities.
King Henry VIII was known for his appetite. Here at Hampton Court Palace, 14 different kitchens cook up traditional meals. Natalie Williams is a historic kitchen interpreter here. She researches historic recipes and works on them in costume for guests.
We're recreating Tudor history, Tudor feasting, by having some meat on the fire. We've got some beef, which we're currently roasting. We're also making some marchpane, so we're going to be making some figures.
Drinks feature spice-infused libations, beers, and different varieties of wine. Tongue and jelly, quince pies, and orange tarts were also popular festive treats.
So the sweet treats at court were quite special. They were something called subtleties. Now, subtleties were a centerpiece where you'd want to show off and show how much money you have due to how much sugar you can put on the table. They made stuff out of marchpane, which is basically marzipan, and they made stuff like chessboards or churches and sometimes castles.
Queen Elizabeth I once hosted holiday banquets in the Great Hall. Even William Shakespeare performed for King James I at the palace during the Christmas season in 1603. Host James Peacock says it was a busy time at Hampton Court Palace.
Nowadays, we do most of our partying in the lead up to Christmas, but back then it was the opposite. Christmas would then start really on the 25th of December and go for the 12 nights, and there was always a lot going on.
Peacock says the festivities weren't just about the holidays, they were political as well.
Anyone who hoped to remain in power, hoped to remain in favour with the monarch, would show up at Christmas, particularly for at least some of the festivities. But they would hope to be around, particularly on the 1st of January, on the gift-giving day.
The festive fair is in its 10th year at Hampton Court Palace. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The U.S. is planning to extend NATO-like security guarantees to Ukraine as part of a peace deal. The Trump administration praises the move, saying it would be a major win for Ukraine. Find out more after the break.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.